We also found out that he was warned before they switched the water in Flint that it would be dangerous if Flint used the Flint River as a drinking water source. He let it go on anyway. We also found out that there was a privatization scheme and financial fraud involved in the Flint water crisis. Jen and I probably reached out to at least 50 outlets, including The Intercept, with this story. In any sane environment, in any sane journalistic environment, if you had evidence that a governor was directly involved with the biggest environmental cover-up of the 21st century, I do not say that lightly. This is the biggest environmental cover-up of the 21st century. If we had a healthy media system, we would be swatting off. There would be a line around the block of outlets that wanted this story. Originally, I spoke with the Rolling Stone. They wanted it at first, and then they moonwalked away. I mean, we spoke with many outlets. I literally had outlets saying to me, is there any connection to Trump? I said, well, I mean, Flint happened under Obama. Trump hasn't made it any better, but no, there's no connection to Trump. Oh, okay. Yeah. Nice story. Hope you get it somewhere. They literally wanted us to basically create an angle or a connection to Donald Trump to publish it. I joked, but I'm half serious. I think if I could prove that Vladimir Putin was involved somehow in the Flint water crisis, the New York Times would have wanted it. MSNBC would have wanted it. Yes, Rolling Stone walked away from the Flint story. Eventually, the story ended up being published in Vice. Credit to Vice. It wasn't the easiest. Frankly, it was delayed by about 6 months. Certain parts were watered down, but at least Vice saw the importance of this story, because this story is not just about Flint. It's not just about Flint, Michigan, and the people of Flint. It's about what kind of country do we live in? Do we even live in a country? Do we live in a country where it is tolerable that people can accept and move on from the government poisoning its own citizens and then leaving them to die for years? 6.5 years later, the water is not clean in Flint. It doesn't matter what the data they have put out says. Jen and I broke a separate story that they cooked up the data and the water testing. But why this is connected to what Glenn's talking about? The media, especially media that has been hijacked by corporations that own it, MSNBC, CNN, they're owned by multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerates. The New York Times, which in advertising calls itself independent, has wealthy investors. The Washington Post is owned by the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos. All of these outlets are not interested in the downtrodden. They're not interested in consistent investigative journalism. They're not interested in investigative journalism that will expose power if exposing that power is against their political ideology or their parent companies that own them political benefit. CNN is not interested in investigative journalism if that investigative journalism will harm its parent company, AT&T. The president of CNN, Jeff Zucker, it was exposed, was literally, while Donald Trump was running for office, in addition to giving him billions of dollars of free airtime, was literally talking to Trump's allies about, after the elections, giving him a weekly primetime show. MSNBC has literally morphed from, back in the day, kind of progressive. Remember when Olbermann was sane and was giving stinging monologues against President Bush and the Iraq War? It has morphed into basically a rehabilitation home for warmongers, war criminals, and neocons. with essentially the Glenn Becks of the left. Rachel Maddow, who I used to love when she was sane and had some integrity, has become a deranged lunatic, crying and warning about Russians hacking into the electric grid and freezing us during the polar vortex. Warning about, the Russian boogeyman under your pillow. While Flint still doesn't have clean water 6.5 years later. She doesn't say a damn word about that anymore. While Native American reservations are literally on their reservations, have the Trump administration drilling for oil on their reservations. While public housing units in New York City right now, as the weather is getting colder, have no gas. And Mayor de Blasio ain't doing anything about it. And beloved resistance hero Andrew Cuomo isn't doing anything about it. Right here in New York City. While 15,000 workers were laid off by General Motors last year, we went out in the field. We covered it. We interviewed those union workers that were laid off after General Motors got a $51 billion bailout from Obama. While black men are being executed all over this country. Yeah, they'll cover the protests for a few days, and then they're done. While corruption reigns supreme, while the Democratic Party has been hijacked by Wall Street and fossil and big real estate and big pharma and Silicon Valley, the Republican Party is just as treacherous, if not more. Our government has been sold to the highest bidder, and then people like Joe Biden have the audacity to go on stage and say, "This is America. We're not Denmark." During a deadly pandemic where tens of millions of people have no health care right now, have no jobs. Since July, do you know that we are now over 90 days since July that expanded $600 unemployment expired? For 3 months, American citizens during a deadly pandemic they had no control over, that frankly the president squandered. If you're here and you're a COVID truther, this isn't the place for you. Trump is responsible for tens of thousands of additional deaths that didn't need to happen. During a deadly pandemic, the Democratic presidential candidate is saying, "Oh no, he literally said during the debate, nobody caught this but me." He literally said during the debate, you have a human right. You have a human right to affordable health care, meaning you have a right to pay to live. You have a right to pay to live. Something is not a human right if there is a barrier to entry. During a deadly pandemic, the Republican Party nor the Democratic Party has given the masses health care. During a deadly pandemic, the government has not just covered people's payrolls like they're doing in Europe right now. During a deadly pandemic, you have corporate vultures that control and buy our politicians, like that scumbag judge from Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary. You have literally corporate vultures stealing PPP money meant for hurting small businesses like my parents. You know how much of that PPP money has been diverted to donors of the Democrat and Republican Party? Joe Biden, during the primary, literally lied. He lied about meeting with Nelson Mandela in apartheid South Africa when Mandela was freed. He lied about being on the front lines of civil rights sit-ins, which he never participated in any. He's lied about his role in the Iraq War. He's lied about pushing NAFTA. He's lied about half of his record. Frankly, I love Bernie. Bernie let him get away scot-free. Bernie never challenged him the way he needed to be challenged. And the corporate media covers none of this. I could go on. I could rant till 10 o'clock at night. The corporate media covers none of this. Why? Why? Because A, they don't care. They're all a bunch of geeks that only care about the horse race. B, most of them are doing very well financially and are completely detached because they live in New York and D.C. for the most part from the suffering and pain in Flint and other communities. And number three, and most important, because if they covered these things, it would be a direct threat to the status quo. I don't want to be cheesy, but that is literally why we created Status Coup. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.